Welcome back to GMK, everybody here. The mask on my face. If we look back at 2020, it's going to be one of the things we are absolutely going to remember this year for. And Mother Nature, she put on one of these herself. We had a very low severe weather season in terms of the amount of we saw here in KAKEland, really all across the country. It was one of the record year lows, but that did not mean that it did not present opportunities to get out and chase this year. And this week on our Storm Saga Sunday, that tongue twister is going to take me a while to get used to. We're going to go back and look at the 2020 chasing season and what it was like to be out on the road during a pandemic.
2020, in the not too distant future, will be an adjective that describes something that isn't very good. And for those of us in the storm chasing business, this season was just as 2020 as everything else seemed to be this year. But given the circumstances that unfolded, this was the perfect year for Ma Nature to take up quarantine for herself, as life on the road would have been difficult at best. And not to mention, the lack of severe weather was exactly what most of us needed, as we had plenty of other things to contend with. It was slim pickings this season, especially here in KAKEland.
Southwestern Frederick County.
In fact, through the first 9 months of the year, there has yet to be a single tornado in the Wichita County warning area, and only 24 reports of tornadoes have been recorded in KAKEland so far this year, with the actual tornado count probably even less than that. The state of Kansas typically sees over 90 tornadoes on average per year.
Here it comes, coming out from behind the tree right now.
That all culminates in a very slow chasing season. Still, there were some storm opportunities, and on those very limited chances, I did enjoy some good storms here in KAKEland. The Memorial Day weekend was a busy one for me, as is typically the case since this is the high point of the severe weather season, and between weathermanning in the mornings that weekend, I drove out and back to western Kansas a few times for some storm action. 2 of those days produced some very hefty hail, including this storm near the Colorado border in southwest Kansas that finished off my already cracked windshield. More hail a couple of days later near Mineola produced baseball-sized hail as well. The best hailer of the year came back on June 24th. This slow-moving supercell exploded southeast of Hays and became a prolific hailer as it drifted south through Lewis, where it unleashed a barrage of large hail, many of those stones greater than 2 inches. That storm continued into the evening, eventually south into Oklahoma, leaving behind a very picturesque scene in its wake. But my favorite day of the year here in KAKEland easily had to be the May 14th marathon day that ended with some of the most incredible lightning I've seen in recent memory near the town of Eureka. This followed a couple of storms earlier in the evening that looked pretty decent, but ultimately were mostly hailers. It was the show After Dark that produced an incredible lightning display that went on till almost 4 in the morning, yielding some of my favorite photos in the last couple of years. I ventured out of KAKEland a couple of times through the season when opportunities presented themselves, but the pandemic kept my travels in check. But I was able to manage a couple of decent days out of state, including nabbing what would be my only tornado intercept of the year near Arnold, Nebraska, salvaging my streak of seeing at least 1 tornado every year since 2003. And if it weren't for other chasers who had a better view beneath that funnel, I may never have known, and that would have perfectly defined 2020 in terms of my chasing season.